Again, welcome to everyone. Many of you are here as part of Jesuit alumni from across the country. Some of you found out about us through a parish bulletin announcement or within your diocesan paper. No matter where you're hailing from, we are glad you are here. So the question before us today is a primary question, right? We're asking you to discern if God might be calling you to a deeper commitment to service and spirituality in your retirement. And that might be true. So the question also is whether that can be specifically lived out through the Ignatian Volunteer Corps. So that is our primary question for us today. And we have three presenters again that will answer that question for us. So I'm going to ask my colleague Elaine to start us in prayer and then start our session. Welcome, Elaine.
Thanks, Nora, and thanks everybody for being here. This is a lovely prayer I found from Xavier University. The author is unknown, but I think it really speaks to what we're doing today. Today, O God of all days, give me an experience of your heart. Draw me deep into your very being, into the core of your love for me, for others, and for the world. Give me a glimpse of others the way you see them, by loving them, forgiving them, and delighting in the way they give glory to you through their very existence. Help me to discern out of this open place of deep affection, so that I too might be a useful vessel of your love in the world. Amen. So I have the privilege of introducing Father Bill Waters, and he's going to talk a little bit about the history of where IVC was started and his experience as being part of our community. So Bill, I'm turning it over to you. Is that working? Let's see.
Bill, you need to unmute.
Oops. Can he hear you? Bill, have you unmuted yet? Where is he?
How about that? Is that good?
There you go.
All right. So again, good morning, good afternoon, and thanks to Elaine and thanks to Nora for the introductions. And I have a long history with the Ignatian Volunteer Corps. It reaches all the way back to 1995 in September, when Charlie Costello, a Jesuit priest, and his companion, another Jesuit priest, Jim Conroy, invited me to consider, I was the pastor of St. Ignatius Church at the time, in making some possible space for this burgeoning new Jesuit mission called the Ignatian Volunteer Corps. It was to be initially a local Eastern Seaboard mission, and then eventually, hopefully, God's grace, spread across the country. And that's where we are now. So again, welcome to all the people across the country who are participating in this wonderful conversation this morning. And so we did set up an operation here at St. Ignatius Church, and the Ignatian Volunteer Corps still does operate locally as well as nationally from St. Ignatius Church. And of course, the mission, which will be talked about more in detail by Elaine, has a twofold mission, namely to serve the poor in various kinds of ways in different cities that they're going to be located in. And of course, very much a spiritual life connected and steeped in Ignatian spirituality, a life of prayer, a life of reflection, a life of contemplation, a life that also calls each person to daily prayer, and also team prayer once a month, as I understand. Again, Elaine will be speaking about that in a few minutes. My own experience was early on to work closely with Charlie and Jim when they began to develop the operation of the Ignatian Volunteer Corps. And I had worked early on in my life as a Jesuit with a woman called Suzanne Gainey. When Charlie was stepping down in the early 2000s and Jim Conroy was stepping away from active full-time participation in the Ignatian Volunteer Corps, Suzanne Gainey stepped on board and became director of the Ignatian Volunteer Corps. Those early years, of course, were very much involved here in Baltimore, Washington, Philadelphia, New York, and up in New England. And her dream was, of course, how to expand and move to the heartland and beyond, out to California and down into the South. And of course, the rest is story of how she was able to do that. And of course, the marvelous person, Mary McGinnity, who took the place of Suzanne Gainey and has ever since been the director on the national level. And of course, the multiplicities of ways in which in various cities, you people who are already listening to this conversation, but also your peers across the country are engaged in serving the poor is really amazing. And it touches us on all possibilities where we find poor people, whether they're in soup kitchens or in various on-street programs that serve the poor directly on the street, or in hospitals, or in the case, for instance, of this school that I'm engaged in, the Loyola Early Learning Center, and now called the Loyola School. This group of people, of course, are always in touch directly with the poor or are working through a ministry that's serving the poor. We've had the very good fortune here at the Loyola Early Learning Center to have one of the Ignatian Volunteer Corps people early on, namely when we were plotting and planning to open what initially was a preschool and then became and is now an elementary school also. Boz Borowicki was very much involved in the staff at the time and offered his services directly to me as an Ignatian Volunteer Corps to help me set up and establish the Early Learning Center, which actually opened in 2017. Subsequently, Boz has stepped onto the Board of Trustees, and he now heads up our financial executive committee at the Loyola School. But also beyond that, we've had the good fortune of having three wonderful volunteers. 2 years ago, a woman by the name of Carol Ripicki, who had been working at Mercy Medical Center here in Baltimore, she stepped up and she now actually teaches 1 or 2 days a week at the Loyola School. She teaches religious studies to the children. And then just a year ago, we had Mark Palmer, also a Ignatian Volunteer Corps person, step on board. He once was the CFO of Catholic Relief Services for 22 years, handling an almost $1 billion portfolio for the Catholic Relief Services. So he has stepped on board and he handles us our financial needs and our financial reports and our budget. Recently, we also have a third person from the Ignatian Volunteer Corps to step on board and help us as an administrative staff person, Melanie Walters, different from my name. My name is Watters. She's got an L in her name. Anyway, she has just recently stepped on board in the last 2 months. Both Carol and Mark have committed themselves to continue working with us next year. So we're very happy about that. And with Melanie on board, we will now have 3 volunteers here in Baltimore assisting us either 1 day or 2 days a week in carrying on our mission and our operation. And obviously it's all about educating our young people. And the Loyola School, by the way, is a small school and it is engaged in offering Jesuit education to preschool children, and eventually as we move into an elementary school that will help children from poor families get a quality education, and of course eventually move on to our St. Ignatius Loyola Academy, which I founded some 28 years ago, and from there to move on to Cristo Rey Jesuit, which I founded also some 16 years ago. So we call it the educational ecosystem, a step ladder for children from poor families, low-income families who are underserved here in the city of Baltimore to have an opportunity to get an excellent education. So I'm very grateful to the IVC for its wonderful ways in which it's helping us accomplish our mission in educating these wonderful kids. I'm going to turn things back to you, Nora, since you're the chief honcho here in the Baltimore City, and also to Elaine. Thank you all for listening in on my own brief experience of the Ignatian Volunteer Corps over the last 27 years.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you so much. It's amazing what you have done in Baltimore, and we are grateful. Nora, I think we're going to go to the next slide. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Look, it's building like that. That's very nice. It's different. Okay, I'm going to speak a little bit about the pillars and foundation of the IVC mission. As Bill said, it was created over 25 years ago at the request of some parents whose kids were going into what's called the Jesuit Volunteer Corps, and they said, "Hey, you know, where's our opportunity to do this?" So that's where the idea came from. We are based. You see that that acronym AMDG. That stands for Ad Maiorem Dei Gloriam, which means for the greater glory of God, and that is the linchpin, I guess, of Ignatius's work. And then the men and women for and with others is part of the Jesuit charism. So those two things come together: Ignatius's focus on everything for the greater glory of God, and then the Jesuit focus on this charism of being there for and with others. The IVC offers kind of a unique option for people. We try to bring around a transformation from volunteering and service into mission, into really transforming our hearts. What we might hear or what might have heard is called metanoia, this change of heart or change of mind, so that we first are able to see Christ in others, and then eventually and ultimately to become Christ for them and with them, to empower them as Christ empowers those he heals, and with their healing and hope. The idea is empowerment. The three pillars are intentional, and I'll go through them very quickly here. First is social justice. We're going to move from moves from beyond charity and the works of mercy, which are essential, and a lot of our volunteers work in exactly that, in the works of mercy. But it's also to accompany people. Like I said, empowering the poor, working with our clients, working with our partners, and John will talk more about this as he gets into talking about. But many of our volunteers work in direct service to the poor. Some are working to create opportunities for growth, and some take it further and work in advocacy with some of our Jesuit partners. As we go to the spirituality component, the spirituality component is based on Ignatian spirituality, which has as its basis seeing God in all things and walking humbly with Jesus. The spirituality, obviously, because we're tied to the Jesuit organization, we are part of the Catholic Church, but the spirituality goes beyond that. And so we do have people who are typically they're Christians, because we're focused mostly on Christ, but it's open to anyone who desires that relationship, that deeper relationship with Christ. Some of the people who join the IVC are very versed in Ignatian spirituality. Others, I say, don't know how to spell Ignatius's name. So it's quite a beautiful interaction, actually, within the communities, to see people who are very versed in the spirituality, working with those who are just coming new to this, and to learning about Ignatius and his spirituality. Some people who become IVC Service Corps members decide to go deeper into Ignatian spirituality and to do the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius, and some just enjoy the prayer experiences that we offer in community. So, and I'll talk a little bit about community. Nora, you can change the slide right there. Again, John's going to talk a little bit more about community, but this is the lovely picture, my blessed and beloved community Nora and I work with in Baltimore, at least about 2/3 of them, I guess, at a retreat earlier, in September of this year. The community is an essential part of that. It's why it's a pillar. It's really an essential part to be able to share and process experiences with each other. Since Baltimore was the start of IVC, we have people who have been members. They're now emeritus members, still members of the community, who've been there for 22 years. It's not an all or nothing kind of thing. It's not like a club. You have to come to every meeting. The idea, though, is to make a commitment not only to the service of others and to the growth in spirituality, but to each other in community. I know a lot of people who are our members who here in Baltimore who really consider this to be their spiritual community. Nora, go ahead to the next one. I'll jump ahead. So typically, what I'm going to focus in on here actually is the two final bullets. What I'm going to be talking about here is pretty typical of all the regions. Some of it might be a little bit, there are changes and there are differences depending on the size of the region and all those kinds of things. But I want to focus in on those last two bullets, this concept of journaling. I like to call it a listening book. Journaling can be can be intimidating, I think, for some people. One of the things that Charlie Costello and Jim Conroy felt was essential was the idea of writing down what our experiences are, really processing our experiences in a very honest and open way. I like the concept of listening book because listening book is, you don't have to write in complete sentences. It's, you just say, okay, what have I learned from those I served today? What is my awareness? Where did I find God? Where was I challenged? And one of the essential prayers in Ignatian spirituality is called the Daily Examen. And that would be something that we would talk about if you're interested in getting more involved, but I don't want to take too much time on it now. But it's very important for us to be able to process this because that's where we see God being active in our lives, and that our spirituality becomes part of our life rather than an adjunct to it. Another part of what we offer is a monthly individual spiritual reflection. Some of the regions have group spiritual direction as well, but there are trained spiritual directors that, if you choose to, you can go and see once a month to process your experience in service and to see where God exists and is working in your life. Okay, Nora, you can go to the next one. Again, this is a flow of a typical year. It's not this way necessarily in every region, but typically the service year goes from September through June. And again, John will talk a little bit more about the commitment and all that kind of thing. But we typically open with a commissioning. Some regions have an opening day retreat, some have a 3-day retreat, but we pretty much meet monthly. Okay, and that's kind of a standard for us. Now, in some of the regions that are larger geographically, say New England or Chicago or DC, some of those regions are very large and their partners are kind of spread out throughout the region. So the regions break into what we call groups, and they're able to meet as small groups so that people don't have to travel very far and it's a little bit easier to manage. But typically the whole group will get together, say in December, for a morning of reflection. This past Lent, we had a wonderful group one. We worked with DC and Northern Virginia, and that happens sometimes. The regions will do things together. We had a wonderful Lenten morning of reflection down in Washington. And then at the end, like for example, on Tuesday, we had our closing mass and our gathering of graces, where we share the wisdom and the graces of the year. And it's really, really lovely. And then we start back up with a new volunteer orientation in September. Just to mention, again, different regions do different things. Some regions are on kind of a rolling admission. So while we like to get people into a new volunteer orientation in August before they start, some regions will take volunteers as they come in and then kind of do mini orientations with them so that they can learn about IVC and Ignatius and have somebody that they work with. So anyway, let's see. I think that's about it for me. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. And now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, John. And John's going to talk a little bit more about, as Nora said, service and partner aspects of IVC. So take it away, John.
Great. Thank you, Elaine. Good to be with you all. I want to start out this part of the presentation by talking about that third pillar that Elaine referenced, which is community. And what does it mean to be community when you're a part of IVC? It can mean a lot of different things, But we're talking about being in community with one another, other folks who are also serving and doing different things within the community that you live. But there's also a community that we form with the partnerships where we do our service. And so the next couple of slides are just some examples of some of the things that people do when they're serving as an IVC member. These two pictures right here, Joan on the left is working as a teacher, as an ESOL teacher. She actually came to this work as having a career as a music teacher. And when she found this position, she wondered if she was going to be able to adapt that skill set to teaching ESOL. And she was able to do that with the help of her community at her service placement. And Anne Marie is doing some tutoring with some students after school. So next slide, Nora. Thanks. So these are some other examples of things that people are doing. On the top left, we've got Robbie, who is doing some work training with some folks that are studying to become nurses. To her right, we have Louise. Louise is working as a case manager, and case management can be a lot of different things, but in this case, it's providing resources for services in the community and for different things that people might need to stabilize. And it could be food, it could be other resources. The picture down at the bottom left, this is Dick, and Dick is working with someone in an employment capacity, helping with resumes, doing doing interviews and mock interviews and helping this person get ready for the work world. And at the bottom right, we have Fran, and Fran is working in a food pantry, distributing food to the community. So these are things, these are types of positions that may come up for you when you're thinking about doing service in the community. Next slide, Nora. This one's a little bit different, and I highlight this one for a couple different reasons. This is a gentleman by the name of Porter who retired from food service and wasn't sure how that would be applicable, didn't think that he wanted to be in a food pantry. And as it turns out, there was an urban farm in a part of the city that would be considered a food desert. And so they didn't have a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables. And there was a number of people that got together and decided to do some farming on a couple of empty plots in a tough part of the city. And so he has worked there for 2 years. He harvests food. He helps them turn over the soil. They have built some greenhouses and done some different things. And he's been pretty excited to transfer his work in food service to this urban farm. Next slide. So what does this process look like? So what we're doing today is what we call an information session. And a number of the regional directors, many of them who are on the call with us today, have done some of these locally, but this is the first one that we've done for a group of people nationally. And we create awareness around the existence of IVC in the regions where we serve. So this is an information session. A lot of the regional directors will work with local churches or schools to come and speak to people, to let them know that we exist, and to offer them an opportunity to start to discern whether or not service through IVC is something that would be meaningful to them. These could be speaking engagements. They could be ads in a bulletin where people see that what we're doing in the community. A lot of our existing members who have been greatly impacted by their experience with IVC will share that experience with their friends, and they offer opportunities for them to come and join us and to see a little bit more about what we do. In the beginning, Nora mentioned that I oversee what is called the Curry Alumni Partnership. And one of the things that we do is we work with the Jesuit colleges and universities and also the prep schools where they exist to get the word out about what we're doing. Because as most of you know, when you're Jesuit educated, the seeds of service to others are planted early. And at a time in your life when you've either retired or you're not raising family at home the way that you once did, and you have time to give back, that's a time that you can start to think about applying that in service in this way. The next part, after you become aware of what we're doing, is that we invite you to apply, and we invite you to a meeting so that you can meet others. You can get more of a front row seat in what's going on and to see if it's something that would be a fit for you, because something that Nora has talked about, is that a lot of people will think about their relationship to God, and they explore their own spirituality. And then people also will think about doing service and volunteering. But what we at IVC ask you to do is to combine those things and to become a part of a service corps. And that invitation that we offer is a time for you to really see if this is the right fit. There was a question, I believe the question was from somebody named Arthur, about how do we figure out placements? And so that kind of fits into the discernment process. The regional director works with you on where you think you're being called. And sometimes we have a whole list of places that are really wanting to have an IVC member come and join, and there may be a place right in that list that you fit naturally, and we get you connected with them. And sometimes if you have some ideas about things that you want to do and we don't have those partnerships existing already, we can reach out to folks and explore other opportunities in your region to develop new placements that might be a good fit for you. Sometimes we have, I mentioned, I showed some examples of some teachers. We'll have a teacher that steps forward and says, I have 30 years experience and I really would love to continue teaching through IVC, and we can connect them. Sometimes the same teacher will say, I had a wonderful experience in my career as a teacher, but I want to do something different. I don't want to use those skills. I want to serve in a different way. And we help you figure that out and get you connected. I think that we're good with the next slide, Nora. So is IVC for me? These are some of the things that we ask you to think about. Does the idea of a community based on social justice, service, and spirituality appeal to me? Do I have the time and the ability to make this commitment? We ask people to commit to 8 or 16 hours a week. And do you have the willingness to reflect on that service? And can be a private reflection, but it's also a reflection that you do in connection with your community and the others that you are serving among in the IVC community. And then lastly, am I interested in learning more about the Ignatian spirituality and deepening my faith? Because this is a big part of what we do when we come together as a community. Next slide. So this is a slide that shows where we have regions currently. And many of these directors are on the call today. And I'm going to get into some next steps a little bit later to talk about how we're going to extend ourselves out to you to give you some more information. But it's good for you to know where we exist currently, and that we also talk about being able to expand into other regions. But one of the benefits that we've gained from this time during the pandemic is what we're doing right now. We're utilizing Zoom to connect with people all over the country. And in that medium, we have also been able to offer virtual programming. So there are people right now that are IVC Service Corps members that live in a part of the country where we don't have a region, but they are able to teach through the Jesuit Worldwide Learning Center, or they're able to offer administrative support because it's stuff that they can do online. And there's partners that benefit from that kind of service. And as Father Bill mentioned earlier, we do really look at service to the poor when it comes to placing people in service sites. But some people have the skill set to do that directly, hand to hand, eye to eye. Sometimes other people have technology skills, or they're good at grant writing, or they might be able to offer something through the finances. Maybe they're accountants, or they have done fundraising. And these are all things that can support organizations and schools and churches when we're looking at placements and trying to serve our community. So I think I am finished with that part of my slide piece. And I am turning it over to you, Nora, unless I was supposed to do something different.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.
We do have a couple questions. Thank you, guys. Please continue to stay muted and enter your questions into the chat, which would be wonderful. Diane asked a specific question about work in Baltimore. Diane, I'll connect with you on that as I direct the Baltimore program. I would like to direct this question. How does IVC determine where volunteers are needed? Or is it the volunteer's responsibility to uncover the organizations needing assistance for the poor? John, I'm directing that question to you.
So I think I addressed this a little bit, but I think that I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here, so we have to kind of pay attention to the Holy Spirit. But I think that we are brought to different partners in different ways. And I have experienced working with someone who has come and said, I want to be a part of IVC, and I have an established connection at a place where I feel comfortable, but I really want to do it within the context and Service Corps experience of IVC. And I've connected with them and been able to work with that. Other times, someone has an idea about a social justice issue that is important to them, and we might not have a relationship with someone that exists, but we start to do that work together. We reach out, we tell them who we are, we tell them what that commitment would look like, and we see if it's a fit, and we start that process together. So,
John, can you quickly speak to the notion that IVC regions do have like a cohort of partner agencies? You know, each region, each city has a cohort of agencies that are their primary partners.
yes. So, you know, depending on how long they've been a region and how many people we have actively serving, numbers can vary. But one of the responsibilities of the regional director is to reach out to partners in that community. And it may be long before we have someone who comes forward and says, that's where I would like to do my placement. But the regional directors have a list of existing partners who are looking for IVC members to join them. One partner that I can think of off the top of my head is we've worked nationally with the Cristo Rey Network, and we do different things in different cities with that school. But many of them have said, we have some needs in 3 or 4 different areas. And if someone is interested in joining our community and doing their service in this capacity, we would love for them to join us. So the short answer is the regional directors have a list of existing places where they can send people and talk about what that service would look like.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Elaine, just to shake it up, I'm going to direct this question to you. This whole question of, is the time commitment to service site set in stone? But also, Elaine, if you could highlight the general commitment of time to the community as well, please.
Right. Sure. The interesting thing about the time commitment, it used to be that we say 1 day or 2 days, but it doesn't always work out that way. We have people who work 2 hours here and 2 hours there and 2 hours. You know, our biggest competition, by the way, is the grandkids. So we try to make sure that we work around that. The other thing is the relationship of the volunteer with the partner is very beautiful. We're partners here in Baltimore with St. Elizabeth's nursing home, and one of the volunteers, his wife and he go away on vacation at different times, so they just work it out. It's, you know, it's the idea of just of being flexible. But yes, I mean, when we do set up the partnership relationship, we do commit to either that 8 hours or 16 hours. Some of our people decide, well, they're going to spread that out and they're going to serve all year instead of just between September and June. But that's how our program year works. In terms of commitment to the community, again, we meet monthly, and those meetings can range. Again, it's different in different regions, but let's just say it's a 3-hour meeting, because of traffic. You just get, you know, it's a 3-hour meeting. Some of it might be shorter, some may be longer. Like I said, we have mornings and days of reflection, so those might be longer. Not everybody comes to everything. You know, in our region, a lot of people come to everything, which is really a blessing. We have social events if you choose to do it. Some regions may add a book club or whatever, but it's kind of up to the individual. I'll reiterate, though, that community is really important. And in my experience, I've been with IVC almost 10 years. And in my experience, the people who do not make the commitment to community don't stay, because all they want to do is volunteer. And you can do that anywhere. Mm-hmm. So the commitment is not only to those you serve and to the partner that you serve, but also to the community.
Thank you, Elaine. Father Bill, I'm going to direct this. 2 more questions appeared. Father Bill, I'd like you to answer this question because you have this brighter and wider view of what mission is, are partner agencies always Christian nonprofits or even Catholic nonprofits? Can you speak to that, please?
Certainly in the Ignatian tradition, we are interfaith. And so when we have organizations, you'd have to speak to the Baltimore scenario. I'm not sure where people are located, but certainly the nonprofit is working for and serving the poor. It doesn't affiliate with any religious tradition. I would say that the Ignatian Volunteer Corps would be open to them, because I think that's the tradition of Jesuits throughout its long history of 500 years. Yeah. So, yeah, would that
Thank
help?
you, Father Bill. That's exactly right. So, of course, it's exactly right. Thank you. Yes, you know, in regions, there's certainly large chunks of nonprofit partner agencies that are indeed Christian and Catholic in their founding, but we also partner with organizations that directly are in service and not in conflict with social teachings. So we have a very wide variety of partners across the country. So currently we have close to 300 partner agencies in 22 regions across the country. Here in Baltimore, we have partners with 35 partner agencies. So, and I would say that more than half of them have Christian and Catholic foundings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, another question. John, please. Are there specific criteria that IVC uses in recruiting our IVC partner agencies, the ones that we have formal agreements with? Please clarify the difference between partner agency and Service Corps member or volunteer. So again, what's the criteria and how do you define partner agency and volunteer?
Yes. So I thought of an example, and I think this will be a good answer to that question that might also touch on some others that came into the chat. But so a Service Corps member is you who is on this call. It is an individual that is feeling called to join IVC as a member and do service within the community and the spiritual program that we offer. And so that is what we refer to as a Service Corps member. We have the word volunteer in our title, but that sometimes can conjure up an image of something that is less of the commitment that we ask for. And so we differentiate that by referring to Service Corps member. Some people prefer the word volunteer, but that is a Service Corps member. A partner agency, and this is where I'm going to get into some nuance, but a partner agency could be a church, it could be a nonprofit, it could be an organization that is serving the poor or the marginalized or the oppressed. Sometimes it's a school. An example I'm thinking of is I approached a parish in my community and asked if I could speak at the masses and asked if I could put something in the bulletin. And they agreed to both of those things and then came back to me and said, would you be willing to place a Service Corps member here in our church? And when we started to think about that a little bit more, there was a program 3 days a week that they were offering to individuals who are living on the streets and needed food. And they needed someone to organize and run that program. And that was a great site for me to be able to place an IVC member. They also have a ministry to the local hospital. And while the pastor was able to get there to do last rites for people, there was a lot of other things that patients in the hospital wanted and needed. They wanted to talk about their lives. They wanted to pray with people. Sometimes they wanted communion. Sometimes they wanted someone to talk to their family in a spiritual context. And that is something that an IVC member is doing on behalf of that parish, and then triaging to the pastor when the priest really needs to be there. And so I hope I answered the question, the difference between the two and what a placement can look like.
Thank you, John. And I will, in terms of the criteria for choosing that partner, I'll quickly answer that and then we're going to close out. Thank you. The criteria is indeed where Father Bill started the session. At its founding, the criteria is that the partner organization is in direct service to those experiencing material poverty. So it could be a school that is primarily serving at-risk youth. So we work in a variety of sectors, certainly education and youth, human trafficking. We even have placements at the international level with Catholic Relief Services, Jesuit Worldwide Learning, National Trafficking Sheltered Alliance, hunger and homelessness, affordable housing, migration, immigration, refugee services. So your regional director has formal relationships with partner agencies within their city that fall within that wide variety of social service sectors. And so people approach us kind of having an interest within a social service sector. They approach us with having an interest in being client facing or doing more institutional strengthening work in the area of finance or administration. So again, we work in a wide variety of sectors, have a wide variety of partner agencies at the city level. And that's a conversation that when you engage your region director, they can walk you through discerning some of those open placements and what's available to you. With that, any other questions that are popping up, we'll be happy to address individually. John, I'm going to screen share again and ask you to kind of close us out, and then Father Bill will close us with a prayer.
Thanks, Nora. So next steps. As you can see, that's my contact information. And we have, as I've mentioned, a number of great regional directors on this call. But what people can do is they can reach out to me if they have any further questions or they want me to connect them. My plan after this is over and we get organized and take a deep breath, I'm going to reach out to all of you who signed up and attended and thank you, but also get you connected to the director so that you can start to communicate with them directly and begin that discernment process locally. So you will be hearing from me with an introduction, and then the next steps will be a part of that. And so direct any questions to me. I'm really excited that you took the time to be with us today. And I'm even more excited to introduce Father Bill again, who's going to close us out with a prayer.
Thank you, John. And thanks again to you, Nora, and to you, Elaine, for your own presentations. And thanks to everyone who joined us. And so I'm going to ask you to bow your heads for a moment and receive God's blessing. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord let his light shine upon you. May the Lord be gracious to you. May the Lord anoint you with the spirit of love and joy and peace. And may God do this in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.